death, the big D, a word that stops conversation cold. Yet, Alan Watts called it the most fascinating thing in life, because until we face death, we can't really understand life, let alone appreciate it. Every night we fall asleep as part of a micro-rehearsal of dying, but we always go to sleep with the privilege of knowing we'll wake up again the next morning. This reflects the cycle of life itself, which depends on the same rhythm of appearing and disappearing. From the sun and moon giving us day and night, to the seasons of nature replacing plant life and the biology of our bodies renewing our cells all the time. Everything travels from birth through to death in a constant cycle of auto-regeneration. This is the infinite cycle that perfectly maintains the eternal constant we all take for granted. So why do we fear the very thing that makes all this possible? Nothing can last forever. So we'd be wise to come to terms with this fact in order to appreciate the life cycle we're living. Watts said, "Just as you can't have mountains without valleys, you can't have life without death." Death isn't unfair or absolute in any way. It's symmetry and balance, expressing itself in full-frame animated technical emotion. When we avoid the subject of death, we deny an important part of our reality. And by its very definition, an incomplete reality will never be enough for us to live our lives fully. Knowing that you will die makes every living breath significant. Every special moment becomes sacred in its own right. Expecting our time to run out even makes intangible things like our love more vital to the subtleties and dynamics of life on earth. It makes our endeavors more urgent, and every comfort or kindness reveal itself as those cherished sweet spots that ignite our purpose in ways that enhance reality. Watts told us, dying is no different than taking off a tight shoe, the pain of which was being compounded by our failure to remove it, and perhaps discard the shoe altogether by completely letting go of it once and for all. Relief can only come once we relinquish the cause or pressure and allow the pain to escape. Death is not the enemy of life, it's the opposite end of our birth, which is an intrinsic part of the whole. It is needed in order to complete the cycle. Imagine if you could live forever. Would you still laugh and love the same way? Would you really savor the magical moments that are likely to be taken for granted? The sunsets, the chance meetings, the synchronicity that coexistence provides, and the remarkable revelations that present themselves along our soul path. Immortality would flatten the urgency of our experience and negate the majesty of almost every surprise. The beauty of a flower is fully expressed before it gives up its form to wilt and perish. And so, the miracle of life is paradoxically buried deep inside the one guarantee, that at some stage, for all of us, it will eventually come to an end. Watts told us that when you die, you don't go anywhere. You simply wake up from the dream of being someone. That someone being whoever you were trying to be, or whatever you believed you were. We are specks within a universe that is capable of remembering itself. A drop of water in a wave that is destined to return to the ocean. Not lost or forgotten, just expressing an offshoot incarnation as the humble byproduct of a proud and essential essence finally returning home, to become one again with its sacred source of majestic creation. Like so many things in life, the truth is wrapped within its own riddle. The quandary surrounding our ultimate demise is that to live fully, we must accept before we die the inevitability that we are all destined to do so. This level of profound surrender is the only way we can liberate our minds from the illusion that we can control everything in life. The sooner we accept that it's much more likely we are actually unable to control anything in life, the better we will cope with the fact that every ending gives way to a new beginning. And to that end, death is just a part of natural living. It is the cycle of life taking a rest, having a well-earned pause. The invisible wheel of life, adjusting its path and changing its costume, in as part of our ever-evolving, unfolding story. Across civilizations, public wakes and private mourning serves to release collective tension and restore balance to the living, much like ancient rites of passage. Coming to terms with the death of someone who has passed allows participants to regather themselves and recalibrate their own blessings in a way that invigorates an inward appreciation of their ordinary lives. The power lies not in the spectacle of funeral ceremonies themselves, but in the psychological permission that a formal goodbye can grant us to put one's burdens to rest. By acknowledging someone's death, many individuals momentarily sympathize with the collective weight of responsibility to rediscover a purposeful vitality and embrace life in all of its glory, on both personally intimate and public scales. Every funeral involves the same alchemical transformation, the scattering of ashes, the tearful whisper of goodbye. These gestures help to translate grief into motion that helps us to move on and continue living. Ceremonial ritual makes invisible forces of reality more visible. Private funerary gestures offer us a crucial moment that lets the living to stop and acknowledge the greater cycle of life, using moments of self-reflection that externalize loss, allowing mourners to transform emotional pain into movement by literally returning physical matter to the periodic table of Earth's elements. When performed mindfully, such acts become meditations on impermanence. Grief shifts from paralysis to gratitude, and our love and adoration morphs into respect for life, as our fear is set free from its attachment to strictly physical forms of existence, which is why we need to apply an acceptance of death to our own microcosmic existence. The realization that your path will inevitably come to an end should ignite your passion to try and live more, to laugh and love as much as you can, to cherish every moment of what we consider to be our own insignificant life, is to acknowledge that our existence is truly sacred to those around us whilst we live, and to those left living once we die. Our time on earth, the impressions we leave, the echoes of our voice and shadows of our form will always contribute to the wider cosmos, whether noted or not, in the same way that every drop in the ocean is needed to maintain the grander scheme of all the closed systems and life cycles it eternally upholds. Mexican cultures embrace the phenomenon of death head-on through Day of the Dead celebrations, which they call Dia de los Muertos. This day of reverence for their deceased relatives practically encapsulates a sophisticated approach to the magic of life. By providing one of the most vivid living expressions of the principle of death, living relatives are taught to accept and cope with humanity's unavoidable cycle of life. Families build altars, decorate skulls, and feast beside the graves of their ancestors, or set them a place at the table for dinner inside their homes, not in despair, but in a crucial display of joyful remembrance that celebrates the marks their loved ones have left behind, and the particular nuanced resonant frequencies of life that their existence may echo forward through the bloodlines of their descendants, within the genetics and memories of their offspring and loved ones. This way, death is acknowledged as part of life's larger continuum. By cleaning tombs and decorating them with colorful gifts, offerings of food and flowers in bloom, laughter and song are permitted to reverberate through the ether of cemeteries in a spiritually healing manner. Many other cultures around the world also acknowledge the death of their relatives and peers in similar ways, not from morbid obsession, but from the need to feel alive again. Some indigenous tribes even resurrect the mummified remains of their dead to involve them in their ceremonies, creating a much more confrontational act of remembrance, which has its own roots in serving a strong purpose within their communities and wider culture as a whole. These bold behaviors serve as stark demonstrations of how strong and powerful memories can be, when encouraged to dance amongst the living instead of weeping alone in forgotten tombs. The result is a profound sense of mass healing and the celebration of communal awareness and acceptance of the inevitability of our shared mortality. A cultural antidote, perhaps, to the levels of denial and fear that many civilized societies shun or ignore, through their cozy addiction to an applied complacency of death being an important and sometimes the defining part of our lives. Yet we would do well to learn that to let go is not to lose our love. It helps us participate in the rhythm of life. Every ending, every farewell, every tear is life renewing its promise. Modern civilization often relies upon mainstream society to force our acknowledgement on a much larger scale through public expressions of these death acceptance rites. We see this whenever a leader, martyr, beloved celebrity or public figure dies. From the spontaneous shrines and heartfelt wishes posted upon a sea of flowers for Princess Diana, to the pilgrimages to Graceland that still occur today, inspired by the life and passing of Elvis. This continual practice of celebrating the existence of esteemed figures through history echoes the same archetypal process that the more death-aware cultures we've discussed tend to embrace on a more domestic and intimate level. Collective mourning of public personas has the tendency to embody a shared ego death, in which millions of fans, followers, devotees, or sympathetic advocates relinquish their personal attachment to a revered icon in public as part of a mass mourning, and in doing so, reconnect themselves to the collective heartbeat of humanity itself. When the world loses a star, millions of us become one body of strangers hugging and grieving together, sharing their pain. In mourning, the image of people whose presence or contribution to life we share tend to help us rediscover ourselves, the mortal nature of our finite existence. Each tear shed and flower laid in public, or candle-lit vigil, is a symbolic offering that helps transmute grief into continuity, turning loss into renewed appreciation for the remainder of us still living, which the majority of us use to self-reflect our worth and re-evaluate our blessings regarding the privilege of life we have yet to enjoy. In every private, tribal, or globally mournful event, the symbolism surrounding someone's death is not considered morbid. Most ceremonial acknowledgements of someone's passing provide therapeutic reminders for us to appreciate the poetic reality of death, and by acknowledging the passing of others and paying our respects to their final resting place, is a stark reminder to us all that life is precious and never to be taken for granted. So in some ways, to hold on too tightly to our everyday cycles without ever expecting it all to come to an end is to some extent stifling our ability to live fully. Whereas, by acknowledging the fragility of life by not pretending our lives are just temporary, and our time on stage is limited to what history teaches us is a brief appearance, perhaps the most empowering way to release with reverence the fear of death itself is to put it in its rightful place, by admitting it is an inevitable, unavoidable, and somewhat essential aspect of life on Earth. Hopefully, by cancelling out this fear of death we all carry inside, we might be able to participate more fully in nature's eternal flux of loss and renewal, by cherishing every living breath and celebrating every moment of our existence. It would be wise, therefore, to conclude that by honouring death with its true shape and purpose, we are better equipped to release ourselves from the fear of death itself in ways that will allow us to reclaim our love for life and relinquish the paralyzing attachments we have to a material existence by embracing the non-physical dynamics of our mortality. After all, no one can deny that when any life ends, a space emerges for new manifestations to begin again, in which yet undiscovered life stories can claim their role upon the ever-changing stage of life, to establish their place within the pages of humanity's greatest story, the miracle of our shared existence within the irrevocable magic of life itself.